Before we get started on the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good evening, dear Sangha. One of two things is going to happen right now. I'm either going to go through the two last sections pretty quickly and attempt to actually get started on the sutra, or I may just endlessly talk as I sometimes do and not get there. So if we do get there, it's going to be a surprise for all of us. If not, at least we will accomplish what we intended for today. So as we've discussed already in past, this is our 5th class. And so we have been studying mostly the 5-fold profound meanings of the sutra, of the Amitabha Sutra, Sukhavati Vyuha Sutra, which is the shorter of the 3 Amitabha Sutras. So today we will attempt to complete or finish up the discussing the function and determining the teaching mark, which I hope will be relatively sort of quick. Maybe, we'll see. All right, so discussing the function. The function, every sutra has a function, right? It has a function, it has a use, or a power and use. So for the Amitabha Sutra, the power is that of non-retreat or non-regression. So as we read the sutra or chant the sutra, right, it's mentioned several times that beings born into the land of ultimate bliss are to not regress back, meaning once you've attained a certain level of enlightenment or have attained the rebirth in the Pure Land, you are guaranteed to never regress back or down to a lower realm of existence. And so rebirth in the land of ultimate bliss is essentially the goal of Pure Land Buddhism. This is probably a controversial comment to say, but to me, since as we know, there's several different traditions and schools of Buddhism under the Mahayana umbrella. The Mahayana umbrella has several, there used to be 26 different schools of Buddhism in the Mahayana throughout the times, but now it's down to like 9 or 10, right? But Pure Land is probably one of the top 3 most popular or well-known, along with Zen and Tiandai, which is Tiantai, which is our tradition here at the temple, which is a mixture of both Pure Land and Zen. So in Zen, at least, Zen is the complete opposite almost to Pure Land, because Pure Land is, well, let me start with Zen since it's shorter. So the goal of Zen Buddhism is to attain sudden enlightenment. So attaining sudden enlightenment in this lifetime during meditation, right, where there is not much study in the Dharma, there's not much chanting or not much, necessarily contemplation for the most part of the teachings. It's strictly practicing Zazen, which is just sitting meditation. and attaining sudden enlightenment by, I think in Zen there's two main traditions. There's the I can't even think of the names now, but one of them is the school of Koans, right? And there's another school, I can't remember its name, but in both cases, especially in the Koan tradition, where the master gives you a koan to contemplate, and that is your object of meditation for the rest of your life until you've attained some enlightenment, right? And so this is considered a pretty difficult path, not an easy one, and definitely not one to be used for most lay people, though lay practitioners can practice those traditions and practices, but it's not a common aspiration for people, since trying to attain sun enlightenment is extremely difficult, even for those who have been practicing or are monastics for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's extremely difficult. But anyway, so outside, a lot of traditions outside of Zen, outside of Pure Land, rely on the practice and the study and the kind of the contemplation and analysis of the Dharma, the sutras, of the practices and teachings. And because of that, it can oftentimes become very, causes discouragement to people, right? Because as we know, Buddhism is very profound. There's thousands and thousands of sutras, discourses, and teachings. And so it becomes very overwhelming for a lot of people that are trying to truly practice Buddhism and trying to, attain enlightenment or have some sort of realizations. It's a difficult path to be on, right? And so there's a lot of discouragement that people often have during their practice. And so it's a common thread that oftentimes when people first come into Buddhism, come into the Dharma, at the beginning, they're very excited about it. They're like, this sounds exactly what I've been thinking and or believing in for my whole life, and this is it, right? And so you start to practice, start to read and study, and then you get excited, you're in like this little honeymoon phase, but all of a sudden, it kind of hits you, and you're like, damn, this is actually really difficult, right? This is hard. This is a lot to take in. This is a lot to learn, a lot to practice, a lot to know. And so it causes a, what is called confusion of dwelling in the womb, right? Where you're kind of just waiting for something to happen, right? Because, as we're in the womb, we're just basically just waiting to be born, right? We're just waiting to be out into the world. So likewise, most practitioners are kind of just dwelling in this womb. They're waiting for something to happen. And so it becomes a little bit discouraging because they don't know necessarily that they're on the right path, right? Unless you have a teacher or a guide of some sort or a sangha to rely on, it's very difficult for a solo practitioner to be able to gauge where they're at in their practice. It's difficult to gauge how much correct information or dharma they know. It's difficult to gauge if their realizations are accurate or correct, right? And so it becomes a very difficult path for some people. And then when Pure Land was introduced, this is where I feel, this is my own thoughts and feelings, and it's a little controversial for some. But when Pure Land was introduced, it was introduced as, again, this is my own opinion, the easy way out. Whether it's true or not, that's just how I feel about it. And I say this because of the contemplation that I've had on Pure Land and in this text, right? Because we chant this text almost every night. And so it becomes, the more you chant it, the more you study the sutra, and the more you study the kind of the practices of Pure Land in general, you see a very common idea across these sutras and teachings. And that idea, that common idea, is that if you practice Pure Land Buddhism, if you practice what we already kind of covered in the first three profound meanings, is that, you know, if you have faith in your practice, if you have faith in the vows of Amitabha Buddha, if you have faith in reciting the Buddha's name, and relying on his teachings, that you will be reborn in this Pure Land, where you are guaranteed to never regress and guaranteed to attain Buddhahood, right? Like, that's a guarantee. And so people often are like, oh, okay, well, I don't really have to practice a lot. All I got to do is recite Amitabha's name, chant the sutra, and do all these other teachings that's teaching us, and I'm going to go to the Pure Land, right? That's a common mentality, but that's unfortunately also incorrect. It is correct to a degree, but it's not correct in the sense that if you just assume all I have to do is chant Amitabha's name and chant the sutra, that you're just going to be reborn in the land of ultimate bliss. Because even the sutra tells you that you can't have, now I forget the verse. Few merits, casual connections, and whatever, right? Meaning that you can't just hope for the best or do as little as possible and hope for this grand entrance into the Pure Land, right? So there's still work required. But people often forget about that piece, right? Because even in Pure Land Buddhism, the only time the bigger sutras are recited, again, there's three Pure Land Sutras: the shorter Sukhavati Vyuha Sutra, the shorter Amitabha Sutra, the longer Amitabha Sutra, and the Sutra on contemplation of Amitabha Buddha. So, unless you're in directly that tradition, either as a monastic or as a practitioner, that's really the only time where you will chant all three sutras. But more commonly, people only chant the shorter Amitabha Sutra. Especially in our tradition here, we only chant the short Amitabha Sutra. However, we are chanting the longer Amitabha Sutra in Vietnamese, which again doesn't really make much sense to me because I don't understand it fully, so I'm just kind of reading to read. But I know the English version. I know of Amitabha's 48 vows, which is in the larger Amitabha Sutra. But those three sutras have to go hand in hand for the rebirth in Pure Land to actually occur, to actually happen. So if that aspiration is what you want in life, in the afterlife, not in the afterlife, but when you're reborn, those three sutras have to go hand in hand because they are connected and kind of pretty much a requirement at this point. But that's pretty much it, right? So it's either the difficult way of practicing Buddhism, which we are all in, or the easy way by Amitabha Buddha, which, don't get me wrong, does not mean it's a lesser way. It doesn't mean it's a discounted way of practicing or a lesser way of attaining enlightenment or being born somewhere better. It's just a different type of practice. And it really just depends also on your own aspirations. What are we trying to get out of the practice, right? Pure Land isn't very popular in Western countries for the most part, because for most Buddhists in Western countries, we are converts, right? And we're converts for a specific reason, because Buddhism calls to us to help us understand our suffering, help us understand our life and why we think, say, and do different things, right? We're trying to actually correct our unwholesome negative habits in life, right? We actually want to do best. We actually want to think correctly, say things correctly, do things correctly. We actually want to improve our life via practicing the teachings, Whereas in most Asian countries that are dominantly Buddhist, or people who have grown up in Buddhism, it's unfortunately just a societal, cultural thing, right? Where people don't necessarily practice Buddhism for the practice like we would, right? They simply just practice because they grew up with it. This is what they know. All they do is go to a temple and chant and bow and request offerings and give offerings. That's it, right? They're not really trying to improve their mind. They're not trying to actually escape suffering. But what they do is go and pray and chant Amitabha Sutra, chant his name repeatedly, often, so that they can be reborn in the Pure Land. And then in the Pure Land, as the sutras state, it is a constant place of practice, right? Where the three lower realms don't exist, right? The hell, hungry ghosts, and animals, they do not exist. And so you're basically in a perfect environment that is very conducive for your practice. And then you're guaranteed after a while to become enlightened. Okay, I've gone off way topic, but anyway. But the point is that if we are reborn in the Pure Land, in the land of ultimate bliss of Amitabha, then there's no backsliding, meaning there's no regression. There's only vigorous progress. And through that progress, we attain the 4 kinds of non-retreat, which is non-retreating in position, non-retreating in conduct, non-retreating in thought, and ultimate non-retreat. So the non-retreating position, this is where we are born in the land of ultimate bliss, where we attain the Buddha position. Because we are, as the sutras state, if we are reborn in the Pure Land, we're reborn transformationally from a lotus flower. That way, and those lotus flowers kind of like the womb, right? And we're kind of in that womb for a while until the lotus blossoms or blooms. And then at that point, then we can see the Buddha, we can hear the Dharma, and awaken to the teachings. And after a while, we attain enlightenment, Buddhahood, right? That is the goal. And then the non-retreating conduct, this is where most people kind of cultivate vigorously for one life or in this life. But in the next life, you become lazy, right? Whether you know it or not. But in the land of ultimate bliss, in Amitabha's land, there is none of that suffering again of the 3 lower realms. There's no evil paths of existence in the Pure Land. And as we read in the sutra, right, there's Kalavinka birds and 2-headed birds. And they are basically birds that talk, almost like parrots. And they're parroting Amitabha's teachings. And so through all day and night, you hear these birds reciting the Dharma. And so if we are reborn there, because the Dharma is constantly being recited by either the Bodhisattvas or the Buddha himself or these talking birds, that we will no longer be lazy in conduct, right? Because it's a constant reminder that Dharma is happening. And so since we're constantly hearing the Dharma, there's no room for us to not do anything besides practice the Dharma. Because think of our lives now, here in this world, right? Until you actually have a time blocked out to either study, read, or meditate, or practice, that's really the only time in your entire day that you're dedicating to the practice, right? You're not constantly practicing 24/7. We're blocking out specific times or places for us to study. And so it becomes a little bit difficult for our practice to truly be perfected because of that. But in the Pure Land, it's the opposite. The Pure Land, the Dharma is constantly being recited. You hear the Dharma constantly everywhere you go. And because there is no suffering, there's no evil realms of existence, there's nothing to hinder you from practicing. And so that way we become more encouraged and vigorous in our practice. Then we have non-retreating in thought. So in the Saha world, the world that we live in now is called the Saha world, where we, as I mentioned earlier, we cultivate vigorously at the beginning, right? We get excited about the practice. We get to be introduced into new teachings and thoughts and philosophies and ideas, and we feel pretty good about it, right? We're ready, we're excited. But after a while, we kind of slow down because we may feel that it's the practice is becoming maybe too bitter or too restricted or almost too uncomfortable. And so we become less vigorous. Because as we practice, especially meditation, right, where the deeper you go into meditation, the deeper your practice becomes, it becomes even harder, right? Because depending on the type of meditation you do, right? Because there's the two types of meditation. There's samatha meditation, which is concentration, and vipassana, which is contemplation. In concentration meditation, it's straightforward, right? You practice and you perfect your concentration, you attain jhana levels, and you essentially just perfect meditation. Whereas in contemplation, because you're actually doing something, you're doing analysis, you're doing contemplation, you're doing research kind of in your mind, this sometimes will bring up emotions, bring up certain traumas, certain memories and experiences, which a lot of people, especially if it's a negative experience or thought or emotion, people don't want to face it, right? Like, this is too much, this is too difficult, this is too traumatic, this is too upsetting or too uncomfortable or whatever it may be, and so they stop, right? They suppress it, or they kind of push back, or they slow down their meditation practice simply because they don't want to face what's arising. But at the same time, those emotions or feelings or experiences or traumas that arise is actually a good indication that your meditation is actually progressing, because actually doing something. Because it's not often that we go into meditation and intentionally bring up these emotions or experiences, right? We don't really intentionally do that. You can, if your meditation is to do that, right? Because every once in a while, when you're trying to differentiate or trying to figure out what is actually causing you suffering or why it's causing you suffering, you do have to kind of intentionally bring up a few emotions or experiences or traumas to kind of dig through it and do some work, right? But if they spontaneously arise, it's spontaneously arising because subconsciously something is tapping into that. And if your subconscious is tapping into those emotions or feelings or experiences, it means that it needs to arise. It needs to be addressed, whether you want to or not. Because if you suppress it, if you push it away, then you're actually holding up your progress. Or you're not able to allow your meditation to progress even further. Because there's a lot of times, depending on the type of meditation you do, when those things arise, they're roadblocks that need to be dismantled. They are roadblocks that need to be overcome. And until they are overcome, or until they are realized or removed, then you won't be able to kind of get over that hump. So kind of think about that too when things arise in meditation, because we think it's a difficult or unnecessary, or that it's a hindrance that it's arising, but it's actually a sign of progress. Not always, right? It depends on your mentality. It depends on where you're at in meditation. It depends on what you're meditating on. But most of the time, if you are practicing and you know that your practice is going well, or that you feel confident in your practice, not in the sense that you can sit in perfectness in meditation, right? That's not going to happen anytime soon. That's not what we're saying. But you know yourself more than anybody else does, right? So you have to be your own advisor. You have to be your own coach. You have to be your own checkpoint in your practice, because otherwise you're not going to know where you're at, right? And unless you have a sangha or a teacher or someone that can help guide you to ask questions, and they can verify or not verify where you're at in your progress or your practice, then it becomes very difficult to try to progress even further. Okay, again, off topic. But it's important, if we are trying to progress and you get to a point that you feel stuck, this is the opportune moment to actually bring up your initial resolve of why you started practicing. This is a good place where you can ask yourself, well, why did I start to practice in the first place? Why did I feel like this was the path that I needed to be on? Why? Right? You have to ask yourself several times. I still ask myself that several times. I always ask myself, why am I a monk? At least once a week, right? And I always have to remind myself why I did it, right? Because it's not necessarily a super hard life, but it's definitely not an easy one either, right? And so it's, even in my own practice, there are moments of difficulty and discouragement. And so we have to kind of boost your own self and remind yourself why you want to practice. What are you trying to achieve, right? Because you're here because you made a resolve in your mind that you want something out of this practice, right? You're not here just to be here, I hope, right? You're not meditating just to meditate, I hope. And so when we are feeling low in our practice, or down or discouraged or unmotivated, we have to bring up that resolve, that initial resolve that we had as to why you started your practice. And only then we can kind of retreat back to this Bodhi mind, right? And we can enter the non-retreat of thought. Then we have the ultimate non-retreat. And so again, when we are at this point, ultimate non-retreat is where we are transformationally born from a lotus, and we will never, under any circumstances, retreat again, either to a level of a common person or to the small vehicle or the bodhisattva level. And so when we are born in the land of ultimate bliss, we obtain these 4 kinds of non-retreat, or these 4 kinds of non-regression, which I hope is an encouragement, right? If we're Pure Land practitioners, which we are not necessarily, but Pure Land is still in our tradition here. So if you are part of this temple, then you are part of that tradition, and we are still part of the Amitabha experience. Even though it's not a major focal point of our practice or tradition, well, I take that back. Even though it's not the main means of our practice or enlightenment, because our first main practice is the Lotus Sutra, right? The Lotus Sutra goes hand in hand with Amitabha practice, or with Pure Land practice, because in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha is telling us that if you practice vigorously, if you practice correctly, and in the Lotus Sutra it gives us specific teachings for us to get to that point. In the Lotus Sutra, it's telling you we must perfect and realize the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 links of dependent origination, and the 6 perfections. Okay? These are the 4 ultimate resources. These are the 4 ultimate paths that will guarantee us Buddhahood. And then on the other hand of that, it's like, okay, well, if you cannot achieve those 4 aspirations, then at the very least achieve or aspire to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land, right? Because the Lotus Sutra practice is difficult. It's not easy. It's not impossible, but it is difficult. And so the Buddha is telling us, practice this first and foremost. If in your practice or toward the end of your life, depending on when you started practicing, you don't feel confident, then retreat to Amitabha practice or retreat to the Pure Land practice. Because at least at that point, if you practice correctly and vigorously the Pure Land practice, then you're guaranteed to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land. And at that point, you are guaranteed enlightenment eventually. Okay? You are guaranteed to be born in his land where no evil paths exist, no the lower realms exist, where the Dharma is constantly being recited and practiced and praised, and you're surrounded by bodhisattvas and other highly realized beings, and so it's the perfect place to be. Okay. The last and final meaning is determining the teaching mark. So in Buddhism, since we do not have a Bible necessarily, our Bible is the Tripitaka, or the 3 baskets. And it's divided into 3 parts, right? The Sutra Pitaka, or the basket of sutras, the discourses of the Buddha. The Vinaya Pitaka, or the code of conduct for monks and nuns. And the Abhidharma, which is the kind of the Buddhist psychology, and this is where all the treatises are located, where the commentary is found, and some of the higher teachings. And so these 3 divisions these 3 divisions, the Sutra division, the first one, deals with samadhi, or meditation, concentration. The Abhidharma deals with wisdom, and the Vinaya, the code of conduct, deals with morality. So meditation, morality, and wisdom. Those are 3 things, those are the 3 that's what I'm looking for. Those are the 3 divisions of what larger practice? Question. Think of it. What list, what teaching, what teaching is divided into 3 main parts of wisdom, morality, and concentration? Yeah. Close. I just said it too. What are the teachings I just said that are in the Lotus Sutra? In the Lotus Sutra, what teachings that I just mentioned? No one's paying attention? The Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path, they listed the Eightfold Path is divided into 3 sections of wisdom, concentration, and morality. And then of the 3 vehicles of Shravakas, or the voice hearers, the Prateka Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas, this sutra, the Amitabha Sutra, belongs to the Bodhisattva vehicle because it takes across the Bodhisattvas that are suited for great vehicle, or the Mahayana vehicle. And so that's why when we are in the Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss, that you're surrounded by bodhisattvas. There are more bodhisattvas there than there are beings, right? Because it takes across bodhisattvas, or beings become bodhisattvas on their way to become Buddhas. The other interpretation of that is beings now in this world, if we are living bodhisattvas or on the bodhisattva path, then we too are also guaranteed to be born in Pure Land, if that is your wish, if that is your resolve when you are on your deathbed eventually, right? So those that are practicing the bodhisattva path, or on the bodhisattva path, or are living bodhisattvas, then we can either make the resolve to be born in any Pure Land that exists out in the realms of existence. Especially if we have a kind of connection with a specific Buddha, or a specific Pure Land, or a specific teaching, beings can make the resolve to be born in those lands, or you can make the resolve to be born in the Saha world, our world, again, to come back and to help other beings become enlightened and ferry them off across the sea of suffering onto the shore of liberation. So that's one of two resolves that we can make. Do we want to come back here into the world of suffering, which is the greater path of a bodhisattva, or we can be reborn in a Pure Land somewhere where no suffering exists, but our resolve is much less than it is if we were to come back into the Saha world. And that's it. Took us, 3 months to cover these 5 profound meanings. But I say all this, I bring this up, I started with this because, again, it's important to know the details of the sutras that we practice, that we teach, that we read and want to study. And the Amitabha Sutra is an extremely beautiful sutra. To me, it's one of the most beautiful sutras that I can chant, that I know of, that I study, practice. And at least for me, it gives me if I connect it with the Sutra of Concentration Amitabha Buddha, which is literally that. It's a sutra that is describing visualization, meditative visualization practices, right? It kind of starts you out small, right? Starts you out small as in seeing the sun rise. I think it's the sunrise or sunset, one of the two, I don't remember. But that's the first visualization practice. And then it goes and it expands and expands, and it details the type of land this Pure Land is in, the type of beings that you see, the bodhisattvas, the different animals that we see, the different colors, the jeweled encrusted roads and trees, and just this beautiful place, right? Which, whether you want to believe in it as a physical place or not, I'm on the fence, to be quite honest. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm on the fence. I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50. And I say that because I do believe in other realms of existence. I do believe in other places out there in the universe that exist, that potentially has life and potentially has beings that are described as Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, right? Because to me, it's impossible that it doesn't exist, right? Statistically, mathematically, it's impossible that other worlds do not exist, right? And so to me, that's why I believe it. I also believe it because either I'm high on something when I'm meditating for a few hours and I kind of see things, or some things happen to me, right? I'm either hallucinating, Maybe I've fallen asleep and I'm dreaming. I don't know, right? But my experience in the practice says that there's more to it, more to the world, more to the universe than just of what we observe and see. On the other hand of that, I also want to be very practical and kind of logical in my practice, right? Because just the same way that we can see the 6 realms of existence, for instance, where I'm always saying that these are more or less just states of mind that we all go through on a daily basis, or almost on a daily basis. And so it's also part of that too, because as enlightened beings, or as someone on a path of enlightenment, even if you just tasted just one little lick of enlightenment, right? Your whole fundamental view in life changes, right? Fundamentally, you cannot see things the same way anymore. And so it's described that, since it's described that Shakyamuni Buddha, right, who is the Buddha of this land, of this world, this is his pure land. Well, when you look outside, or when you look into the world, like, how is this a pure land? This world is killing itself. It's murdering itself. We're on the verge of extinction, right? We're about to just die off. How is this a pure land? Well, a Buddha or an enlightened being doesn't have ideas of duality, right? They don't see the world as dualistic. Nothing is beautiful or ugly, big or small, right or wrong, black and white, right? These views no longer exist. You see the world as it is, and the world as it is beautiful, is perfect. But because we see it through our eyes, our ignorant eyes, and our perceptions and our ideas and our biases, we see things as ugly, beautiful, right, wrong, right? We're interpreting what we see because of our own ignorant mind. And because of that, we can't see this place as a pure land. But an enlightened being can look beyond the chaos and see the beauty and perfection of this world. And we can see that too. And again, this is very much possible with our practice and with meditation. Because again, you just have to taste one lick of aha moment for your mentality to change, for your ideas to change, for your view of the world to change. It doesn't take much, but once it's achieved, there is absolutely no way that you would be able to turn your back on it. There's just no way, because now you know because you've tasted, you've had that very small realization, even if it only lasted a second, and it only takes a second. But as soon as you have that realization, as soon as you have that aha moment, as soon as you've tasted that purity, all you want to do is get more of it. All you want to do is be able to achieve that same realization again. And the more you practice, the longer that realization stays with you. So the first time you do it, maybe it lasts 1 second. The second time you realize it, maybe it lasts 5 seconds. The next time, 10 seconds. The next time, a minute, 2 minutes, an hour, a day, months, years, until it's permanent and you're fully enlightened. So it only takes 1 second. And we've all, maybe not to the extreme of a true enlightening moment, but I would like to believe that because we are here, because we are practicing, because we come back, that you have tasted something. You've had some sort of realization that said, okay, this is what I need to do. This is the path that I need to be on. Because you know deep down that this is what's going to cross you over the shore of suffering, right? We may be a little confused. We may be a little lost or stuck sometimes, But beyond that, we know that our suffering is impermanent. This world is impermanent. The things that come and go, all the feelings, all the hatred, the ignorance, the jealousy, the torment, wars, hate, love, all the things in the world is impermanent. And to me, that's a beautiful thing. Impermanence is such a beautiful thing, because without impermanence, there's no way that we would ever be able to change or to develop ourselves or to progress onto the path. We have to change. We have to be impermanent in order for progress to happen. That's how our minds change. That's how our minds become purified. It's because if your mind is stuck in seeing something in an ignorant way, if impermanence didn't exist, then you would constantly be ignorant for the rest of your life. But because impermanence exists, we can transform that ignorance and purify our minds, purify our defilements, and get rid of the causes of our suffering. All that happens because impermanence exists. Change exists. And so to me, people are often like, oh, impermanence is such a big topic, it's such a scary thing, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's the most beautiful, it's the most valuable gift that you can ever receive. Knowing that life is impermanent. On the other hand of that, because life is impermanent and we know life is short in our little realm of existence here, right? 80, 90 years is nothing compared to the cosmic scale of the age of the universe. We're not even a speck of dust compared to the age of the universe or the age of the other universes. So our lifetime is so insignificant that should help us resolve or want to resolve that, yes, I want to do better. I want to practice. I want to develop my practice. I want to achieve enlightenment in this lifetime, or at least enlightenment enough that will cause you to aspire to, what am I trying to say? Enlightened enough that you know that the path, the end is near, meaning full enlightenment is near, right? So if we take the example of the first 4 levels of enlightenment, right, of stream enter, of once return and non-return and arhat, right? Even the very first level of enlightenment as a stream enter is very possible for everybody. It is, I don't want to say an easy achievement. There's nothing easy about enlightenment, but it is 100% doable if our mind and our practice is in the right way. 100% doable. Because all you need to achieve to attain that first level is to eradicate our self-view, to eradicate our doubt, and to eradicate the attachment to rites and rituals, which to me is the easiest thing to do. Number 1. For me, that's out the door. Doubt is out the door. Clearly, I'm a monk. I can't have doubt in my practice, right? I've taken it to the extreme. And so to let go of those things is easy when you've tasted, when you've felt, when you've achieved, when you've seen the path. And you have a resolve to say, you have the resolve in your mind to want to get to a specific point in your practice. So it's very easy, because according to the Dharma, if you've achieved the level of stream enterer, then you are guaranteed to be reborn no more than 7 more lives. Then when you're at the next level of enlightenment as a once returner, and as the name suggests, you're only going to be returning 1 more time. Then you get to the 3rd level of non-return, means you're not going to be reborn ever again in this world. And then at that time, you can either achieve arhat and be fully enlightened and escape the realm of existence, of rebirth, or you may be reborn in a higher realm of existence, and you achieve either arhatship there, you achieve bodhisattvahood there, or you achieve Buddhahood there, right? Depending on your resolve. But becoming a stream mentor is so doable. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not completely there yet. I'm on the verge. I know I am. It's just there's still things that I need to work on, even as a monk. But people often get so discouraged, and I see it all the time, unfortunately. And it saddens me because I see the excitement that people often get when they first practice Buddhism, when they first come to the Dharma, because things make sense to them, right? It's not necessarily a religious practice. Things don't come from a religious point of view in Buddhism. It's very much a practical path. It's a practical practice, right? You're able to take what you learn from the sutras or from the Dharma talks and use it in your everyday life, right? So it's that practicality that people enjoy, that people like and see, right? And that's what kind of brings them into the Buddhism. But that practicality of Buddhism is not enough, right? Like, okay, yeah, I can take mindfulness off the cushion and be mindful when I'm driving, when I'm walking, when I'm cooking, when I'm cleaning, when I'm speaking, when I'm talking. That's great, right? You're able to calm your mind enough where you can truly be in the moment versus reacting with thoughtlessness, right? And so there's lots of benefits that you can take with you in your everyday life. But if you're not doing more than that, because Buddhism is work, right? It's not just meditation and saying, yeah, I'm going to be mindful doing this, I'm going to be mindful doing that, and I'm going to watch my thoughts, I'm going to listen deeply, I'm going to react correctly. It's more than that, right? And so when people, and that's because that's usually the first thing people learn when they start Buddhism, when they start the practice. Like, okay, this makes sense, this is easy, this is doable. But then as they progress and get deeper and deeper into the practice, where the true practice and teachings actually come in, right? By trying to master and perfect the Four Noble Truths, by trying to live by the Eightfold Path, to try to work on, and perfect the six perfections, to try to disconnect or de-link one of the 12 links of the origination. All this requires actual work, right? That's what discourages people, because most people grow up in a religion where you just go to church or you go do this and do that once and you pray and you just hope for the best, and when you die you can go to heaven and not go to hell, right? You're relying on externalities for your liberation. Buddhism, on the other hand, is like, life isn't that easy. You're delusional if you think that's the case, okay? Liberation requires work, because no one can give you liberation. Not even the Buddha can give you realization. The Buddha cannot do a single thing for you except teach you how to escape your suffering and how to achieve nirvana. That's exactly what he's done. So now it's our job to take that roadmap, to take that blueprint that he provided for us, and actually start building off of it. That's what Buddhism is. Buddhism is taking the Dharma, and the Dharma is your blueprint. It's the exact measurements and dimensions, and gives you all the tools, gives you all the pieces that you need to construct this house of liberation. And it requires you to take all the requirements and actually nail in your house of liberation. So there's work. That's what unfortunately discouraged people. It's like, I have to work. I have to actually put in effort to liberate myself. I don't want that. I just want to meditate and be peaceful. Well, if that's all you want, congratulations. Meditate and be peaceful. But you're not going to achieve any sort of enlightenment or eradicate any of your suffering that way. But I see that all the time, and it saddens me. Because also people have a misconception sometimes of Buddhism, that Buddhism is some sort of happy pill. You practice Buddhism, you're just going to be happy and jolly and friendly and happy and and nothing's ever going to affect you. That's obviously not the case, right? Even as a monk, I still get affected by slow drivers, right? I have very little patience for stupid slow drivers, and so that's one of my, it's a folly of mine, right? And so the only way I'm going to get beyond that is to put effort into correcting those actions. Am I near perfection? Absolutely not. But I know compared to a year ago, compared to 5 years ago, compared to 10 years ago, I've went from saying 1,000 cuss words to saying maybe like a couple, right? So to me, that's progress. It's not perfect yet, but it's progress. I used to like imagine that my car would transform into like some sort of military machine. I can just bazooka the people that are in front of me that are driving slow or that have crossed me or cut me off, right? That's literally what I used to do. Like I used to imagine people blowing up on the street. It's a terrible thing to think about. Now that looking back, I can't believe I ever did that. But that's what I used to do, right? And if someone really pissed me off, then I would basically try to run them off the road. I was an idiot 20-year-old. Like, what did I know, right? But now I know better, I think. And so I went from imagining people's deaths to cussing them out, every single cuss word I can ever think of, to dramatically easing out. I don't imagine blowing people up anymore. I may call them a thing or two, but I'm not doing malicious. I'm not doing it necessarily in a malicious way, right? It's kind of me venting. It's my way of venting, right? Even when maybe I stub my toe on something, I'm like cursing it out, not because I hate it for being there or hate it that caused me pain. I'm just venting, right? Because I know it's not the corner's fault, or not the rock's fault that I hit myself. It's my own fault for being unmindful, not watching where I'm going. And so I'm basically cussing at myself, right? For not being mindful. I'm like, how dare you not be mindful in the most mindful place you can think of, the temple. So we really have to watch how our mind is reacting to things. And that way you can gauge your own practice in a way, right? Because now I know for a fact that I've bettered myself, right? Compared to 10, 15 years ago, when I'm cussing everyone else and trying to run people off the road, to now, I see the difference. I know the difference, right? I can see the progress. Yes, it took 10, 15 years, but that's essentially anything in life, right? So when people think of Buddhism as this happiness pill, they think automatically they're going to sit 1, 2, 3, 4 times in meditation, and all of a sudden all their problems are going to just magically disappear. And because they don't come back. Like, well, this isn't working for me. Let me try something else. I see that all the time. People question me all the time, and that's one of the most common things I see. And it's sad because people don't want to put in the effort. And unfortunately, we live in a society, we live in a world where people are very impatient, right? We have 2-day shipping from Amazon, but 2-day shipping isn't enough. Overnight isn't enough. They want to be able to order something and automatically, the moment they click that pay now, the doorbell rings, and their thing is there, right? Can you imagine if that would be great, don't get me wrong, but it's impossible. Exactly, right? Or you're on Amazon, right? I buy stuff on Amazon all the time for the temple, and on the day that it's being delivered, it's like, oh, your package is 10 stops away. See where your package is. I'm like, I don't care where my package is. I just care that it gets here, right? But the app is making you anxious about your delivery. It's making you anxious about your product, saying it's 10 stops away. See where your package is. What difference does it make to know where your package is? You know it's going to arrive on a certain day. So what benefit are you getting from knowing exactly where this dude is that's delivering your package? It's so bizarre to me. Like every time it pops up on my phone, I'm like, I don't care. Like, why are you telling me this? It makes no difference. Because to me, then that gives people the excuse of obsessing over it, right? I'm like, oh my God, where is it? Where is it? They're sitting on the curb waiting for the delivery person because they're so anxious of getting their package. It's bizarre to me. But I feel like that mentality is truly killing people's, it's killing people's, what's the word I'm looking for? Ability to be patient. So everything's on demand now. You can watch movies on demand. You can speak to people on the other side of the world in seconds, right? There's no more waiting. Like we had to wait even just 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? You had to dial in, you had to wait for the operator, you had to do this, you had to do that, just to get a line from someone to someone down the road. Now all you got to do is just pick up a phone, tap two things, and automatically you're talking to your cousin on South Africa. There's no more waiting. And I think that's a disadvantage, honestly. Don't get me wrong. I like getting my packages overnight or next day or 2 days because I need it. Or you can order food and it's here. You don't have to do much work and go out and it's delivered to you. Don't get me wrong, right? There are benefits. But you have to be able to take these benefits as just benefits and not as a normal way of life. Because if we see it as a normal way of life, then our expectations for everything are going to be in the same way. I expect, to be at this place in a specific time, but then there's traffic, and that causes you to be late, or that causes a delay, right? And now you're upset. Now you're cussing out the drivers, you're cussing out the traffic, and your plans to be somewhere on time is diminished. It's gone, right? Or you have the expectation of going to work and having a good day. You go in, you do your work, and you leave, and you go back home to your family. But then you get to work, and your boss throws, 5 new projects on you, and now you're staying overtime, and you have to cancel going out with your friends that night because you have so much work. Things happen, right? It causes us to be impatient. There's ghosts here. Ignore them. But as true practitioners, right, we have to acknowledge that life isn't 2-day shipping. Life isn't overnight shipping. We cannot make assumptions that just by meditating or just by reading a few teachings that all of our problems will disappear. A couple days ago when I was in meditation, and I was thinking on I was meditating in some book I was reading, but it was talking about it was a commentary on all like the fundamental teachings. And I was meditating on it, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I like the word teachings anymore. Because that gives the implication that if I just teach you something, then you're going to know it. That you're just going to know it, right? So yes, I can teach you something and you can know it. You know and you understand the teaching, but then you do nothing about it. So I'm like, I'm going to change that from now on, if I remember to. Change when I'm teaching, if I'm teaching us down the Eightfold Path. I'm not going to call it a teaching anymore. I'm going to call it instructions. Because instructions implies that you have to do work. You have to follow the instructions in order to assemble the final product, right? That implies work needs to be put into it. Versus if I just say, here's a teaching, and you either listen to it or you read it, and that's all you do about it. Because that's what most people do, right? And so it kind of gave me this profound way of wanting to change how I teach. So my attempt to stop saying teachings and start saying instructions. Because I think that's a better implication to kind of discern what this path is about. Because this path is not a path that you can simply go about passively. You will not get a single true realization out of it. It's impossible. You are wasting your time. Because if you just read and you know, you're just filling your mind with knowledge. Knowledge doesn't get you enlightenment. Knowledge doesn't get you out of suffering. Wisdom does. And wisdom can only be attained through actual practice, through actual doing. And so if you follow the instructions, you're assembling your enlightenment box, and your final product is the enlightenment box. All you have to do is open that box, and you can enter liberation. You can enter nirvana. Forget the box, door. Let's say a door. You're building a door. And once the door is complete, right, all you have to do is open the door. So instructions. I'm going to start giving you instructions, not teachings. I don't want to aspire laziness in people. I want to aspire actual functioning, enlightened people, beings. Okay? That's part of my own monastic vow, is to enlighten all beings, all realms of existence, to attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, full, complete enlightenment. But I can't do that if I'm just sitting here talking. I mean, well, that's actually what I'm doing, right? But that's all I can do, because I can't make people practice. I can't make people do anything, right? And so I'm doing as much as I can. And I can teach you and I can try to inspire is all I want. But there's no way, regardless of what type of inspiration or what type of instruction I give you, I'm simply giving you a prescription. It's your job to go and get that prescription and take that medication. I can't force you to practice. I can't force you to meditate regularly. I can't force you to learn and practice more Dharma. I can't force you to do anything. All I can do is give you guidance. All I can do is give you the instructions. And this goes back to why I'm saddened about a lot of people, is because they don't follow the instructions. They take the instructions that I give them and they just fold it up and they put it away somewhere special and never see it again. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts. Yes, dear student.
I had a question about the pyramid in terms of where it resides. It does not sound like heavenly realm. So where does it reside?
In the western Pure Land of ultimate bliss. So in the west. Of all the 10 directions, it's in the west somewhere.
Well, I mean, because there's 31 realms in existence, so is it one of those 31, or does it exist outside?
It is outside the 30 realms. The 30 realms of existence is places that we can now, in this lifetime, achieve and go to, right? Because, I don't have the book with me. It's in the general book that I gave you. So toward the end, I think in the back, there's the list of the 30 realms of existence. And after the 6th realm, the remaining realms are divided into the different jhana stages. So you can go to those realms of existence via jhana practice. But again, also, those 31 realms of existence are also the characteristics and the realizations that we get from those jhana levels. So each realm of existence is also just like the lower realms of existence, right? How animals are characterized by people who are territorial, who are selfish or egotistical, only care about themselves, right? So even the higher realms, the 30 realms, all have those types of characteristics as well, right? So they're just benefits of extended realized practice. But Pure Lands, the Pure Lands of Buddhas, are beyond the 31 realms of existence.
Okay, so then now when we talk about the 4 stages of enlightenment, Srimanta, Mantrapurna, Namaprana, Arhat, to take the Pure Land approach, is that to bypass those 4 stages to go directly?
Yes.
So that's why I guess it seems easier because you kind of bypass it and say, okay, I'm not going to be reborn in these 31 worlds. I'm going to say, forget that. I'm not going to. I'm just going to go straight to being
Right.
reborn here indefinitely until you achieve liberation.
Yes. Which is why I feel controversial for saying it's the easy way. But to me, it feels like just like a cop out, right? It feels like I don't know. To me, I feel more inclined to practice vigorously because I can learn more and I can achieve more by the practice that I'm doing versus just practicing and following the Pure Land and then just being reborn in the Pure Land and waiting it out until I become enlightened. Because this way, if I'm the way that I practice now, I'm able to dissect my mind. I'm able to see how my mind works and why it works the way it works. I'm able to actually see the defilements and the hindrances and seeing their purification, right? Because seeing that, feeling that, and knowing that gives me so much courage and inspiration to want to do more, right? And so it's a very active practice, whereas the Pure Land practice is very passive. Right? You're doing literally one thing and one thing only, reciting the Buddha Amitabha's name for the rest of your life, constantly, all day, all night. You're reciting Amitabha's name, and that practice in itself may seem very simplistic and very easy to do, but there's the reciting of the name isn't just to recite, right? The reciting the name, as we've discussed before, is to build up concentration. Because even when you're reciting a Buddha's name or Bodhisattva's name or you're doing visualization, that becomes your object in meditation. So when you're reciting Nam Amitabha Buddha, Nam Amitabha Buddha for the rest of your life, all day, all night, in your mind, you also see the image of Amitabha. So that means that you have an object in meditation, and it's not easy for distractions to arise, usually. Right? It takes practice, obviously, as we already know in our own meditation now. It takes practice to trying to stick just with our object of meditation because we get distracted a lot and we constantly have to remind ourselves to go back. But the Pure Land practice is no different. It's still a form of concentration. It's still a form of perfecting that concentration. But the goal is just different than our normal practice. Good question. Any other questions? I hear flies. And I think because the back door is open. Okay, so we've finally finished the fivefold meanings of the Amitabha Sutra. And so next class we'll finally start on the sutra itself, which will be very exciting because we get to all the good stuff. And of course, it's still going to be divided into 3 more parts. So all sutras, at least, are divided into 3 parts: the preface, the principle proper, and the transmission. So every single sutra is divided into these 3 categories. And the preface won't take too long. Well, normally it shouldn't take too long, but for the Amitabha Sutra, the preface is going to take at least 2 to 3 classes, because the preface is mentioning the 16 arhats and the bodhisattvas, and each of those, I'm going to go into each story of those arhats and bodhisattvas and who they are, because I think it's not necessarily necessary, important, but some of the stories of them are kind of funny, kind of humorous, and I just think it'll give us a good laugh every once in a while. And it's also good to know the background story of some of these arhats, because these 16 arhats are the main arhats, are like the chief arhats, right? And some important names like Shariputra and Manjushri and Ananda, Mahakashyapa, and Aniruddha are some of very well-known arhats, and they have some very interesting stories. So I think I'm going to go through that to give those stories, and I think it'll be fun. I hope for all of us. But it will take some time. Some of these stories, at least for the bigger arhats. So Shariputra has 2 pages, Moggallana has 2 pages, Mahakashyapa has 4 pages of his story. So it'll be good stuff, okay? I'm not going to bore you, trust me. Last thing I want to do. Okay, last minute questions, concerns, emotional outbursts. Are we all Pure Landers now? Yes, next Saturday will be meditation. Next Saturday, there will be a meditation class. However, I will not be in town, but there still will be meditation, and Quang will lead that meditation and answer any basic meditation questions you may have for those that are present. Otherwise, you can all enjoy a 45-minute meditation or an hour, depending on what y'all want to do. I'll leave it up to him. But there will be meditation class next Saturday. I just shan't be here. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, no more other questions, and we will transfer the merit and close up the class. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we have accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo Shakyamuni.